Yo, welcome everybody to another Monday Overreactions podcast / broadcast. I'm Geoff Ketchum of OrangeBloods.com, joined as always by Anwar Richardson of OrangeBloods.com. We are doing today's show on our brand new YouTube channel. We're going to be doing more YouTube videos, more discussions, more live shows on a daily basis. So welcome to our channel and do us a favor. Go down and subscribe. And if you feel generous, give us a like. As we get started, all of those likes will help and they'll build up, and it will put us in a position to grow the Facebook page, Freudian slip there, YouTube page as we get going. Anwar, feel like there's a lot of places for us to begin today from an Overreaction podcast. Where do you want to begin?
Okay, so listen, I'm not going to do what I normally do, which is derail our show with talking and complaining about drinks. And I'm not going to give anyone the satisfaction of putting a minute mark into when we actually start talking about sports. I'm jumping into it right now.
You're gonna save it for the end.
I'll save it for the end. I'll find somewhere to get it, Ketch. But for right now, as I realize that I need new readers that are not so reflective, I'm going to start with this spring game that's going on this Saturday. And Ketch, here's my overreaction as I was thinking about writing my column, as I wrote it, and I started thinking about stuff on Saturday night, what we're going to talk about on our show, podcast, whatever we're going to call this. But on this Monday, and Ketch, I really start thinking that this spring game is really, really huge for Steve Sarkisian, more so than most other spring games are concerned. Because what's interesting to me, Ketch, is as I hear Steve Sarkisian talking, right? He talks. I don't want to say it's Tom Herman 2.0, right? But I haven't heard a lot of differences from a scheme standpoint. Like you've heard guys talking about they're going to run 12 personnel. And I'm like, well, they kind of ran 12 personnel last year. And we've heard okay, well, Bijan's supposed to be the guy. Bijan's supposed to get the carries. And Steve's like, well, I kind of think I might have a little rotation here at that point. And then you're thinking, all right, Jared Wiley, I mean, that's the guy who's the playmaker. You got to see more of him. And they're like, well, we really like Cade Brewer. And so I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, wait a second. I was expecting this dramatic overhaul, and I haven't seen the dramatic overhaul. We've heard, the challenges on the offensive line. Well, we expected there to be challenges on the offensive line, whoever was the coach here. The names sound about the same. So maybe with the exception of Ray Thornton. And so what I think from my overreaction standpoint, and that's the purpose of this, is to overreact. I think Saturday has to be a show. I think Texas fans have to walk out of Saturday's game feeling like, damn right, we did it. Damn right that this is going to be a show this year. Damn right we're competing for a Big 12 championship, even though nothing is going to be won in the spring per se. If you want me to overreact on the Monday, there's got to be a show on Saturday.
All right, here's my overreaction for you.
Okay.
Tom Herman wasn't terrible. And if you look at Texas football through the prism of Tom Herman wasn't terrible, but Steve Sarkisian is supposed to be an upgrade, and it's supposed to be, the last steps are the hardest ones to take, right? So if I lived on the Shaka Smart was a damn good coach mantra, you could kind of do that with Tom Herman as well, because damn good's not good enough at this level. Like what Texas is looking for is great. And that was always one of the subtle points that I tried to make about Shaka Smart, was that he's not terrible. He wasn't terrible. He's in the top 1% of his profession. And yet inside of that top 1%, there is a very good, a damn good, a great, elite. There are like levels to this thing. Texas is gambling that Tom Herman was like in this top 70, 75% of his craft among his peers. And that the move to Steve Sarkisian puts Texas in the top 95%. They have hired him because look, we've talked about this as recent as last week. I wrote about it today. If Texas is able to finish out its season last year, if there's no COVID, right? So you give them the Kansas game.
Yes.
Now they're 8-3. and you give them South Florida, and now they're 9-3. Depending on what happens at that point with the LSU game on the right, and it's really hard to say. Texas fans are convinced they would have won that game because LSU was not good last year, but Texas, that's a road game. I'm not quite ready to give that to them, but they're sitting at 9, maybe going for 10 wins if this season just plays out. And so Texas was okay last year, which means a lot of the things that Tom Herman said last year about his team weren't far-fetched or crazy. And I think what happens is Steve Sarkisian shows up, and the Tom Herman era gets remembered as being such a failure that I think sometimes it's such a zero-sum game that the nuance of, well, yes, he was a failure because 7-3 at Texas in a 10-game schedule gets you beat.
Failure's hard. Can you say disappointment? Charlie Strong was. I mean, if that's a failure, then what's Charlie Strong, right? I mean,
failure. So, like the thing is,
that's too different.
This is a pass-fail course, and you can have a
okay.
He lost his job.
Yes.
So, how successful was it? And look,
I wasn't saying successful. I only was asking about failure.
But I wrote about that in my 10 Thoughts column, which you could actually read the entire section for free over at orangebloods.com today. If you're watching this video, by the way, in addition, and you're not on Orange Bloods, go check out our free trial offer. It's there. It's available. These YouTube videos will be here for you, but the guts of what we do obviously will always be on orangebloods.com. I wrote about this today. Tom would bristle at the word failure. He didn't like it because those kids work too hard. They play too hard. They practice every day. And in the moment, 7-3, like he would point to the ranking and he would point to the winning percentage and he would point to these things and say, they're higher than they've been around here in a long time. And that is success on some level. But when you did your show, and I didn't go into depth on this, but it was what I was thinking about. When you did your YouTube Zoom show or Be Live show back in what would have been May.
May? Okay, was it May? Yeah.
I can't remember. I think it was May. Last spring. Last spring with Coach Herman. One of the questions that I had you ask him that I had been trying to get asked of Tom Herman every season he's been here was, are my expectations for this program too high? Which is anything short of a conference championship / major bowl game is not a successful season. And he was like, absolutely. I was surprised because it doesn't leave a lot of wiggle room for anything other than really high successes and failure. And a failure can be 5-7, and a failure can be 7-3 if you don't hit the highest levels. And at Texas, look, Herman was okay with saying it's not a successful season, but what's the opposite of successful? Failure. And he hated that word. And I think all coaches do. I think all coaches bristle at the idea that if they haven't hit a really high bar, they have failed. But at this school, whether or not it's deserved or not, the expectations are so high that it is easy to fail and be the best failure of the group. What Texas was last year, Anwar, was one of the 2 best failures. And if you think that the 2018 season wasn't a failure because they ended up going to the Sugar Bowl and winning it, then this was just the best season that wasn't a success, the best failing season. And it doesn't necessarily mean shame upon all the houses of the players and coaches involved. It is establishing what the bar of success is. And when you don't hit it, nobody around here wants you to tell them about don't tell us about the labor, just show us the baby. And Sarkeesian walks into that. And I think he's going to say a lot of things that Tom Herman said. I think he's going to talk about Roschon Johnson and how they want to get him the ball and share carries. And I think he's going to like Cade Brewer. The gamble is that he's better than Herman and that this staff is better than the staff that he had. And we're going to find out really fast with this staff how much better it is. Because I had someone on Orange Bloods mention this earlier, Anwar. They don't have anything they think this is going to be a season that's very successful, but it's a total leap of faith. They know that there's a replacement at quarterback, left tackle, and key pass rusher. They know those three things are gone, but they believe that elite coaching in college football can mask those things. And that's where we are with Steve Sarkisian going into his first season. He's supposed to be better. This coaching staff is supposed to be better. And the proof is supposed to be in the pudding in September and October, when they might say a lot of the same things, but in terms of the execution of what they're going for, that extra 5 or 10% that they're supposed to be is how this program gets from a 9-3, 10-3 type season that's a failure to everybody who's not a coach or a player, and becomes something that they can then say without hesitation is a success and not a failure, because it's hitting the highest bars possible, which is how this program chooses to be graded by.
So I guess I'm going to ask you a question, and I know you're allowing me to jump back in, but then the question really becomes, and we'll do more of spring game preview as the week goes along. So we'll have a little bit more on that. But the question really, I think, begs to me is, what do you need to see on Saturday that will have you thinking this season won't be a failure? Because that's the word, because failure really is getting to if it's not to the Big 12 championship, it's a failure, right? And not necessarily winning it, right, but at least getting there. And so what do you need to see that makes you think, okay, I've seen enough of this, and this, where I think it won't be a failure? Or is it impossible?
I might be the wrong guy to ask that question, because I've seen so many Texas spring games that I can remember the spring game looking like a show with the likes of Vince Young and the very best teams that we've seen in this program. And I can also remember being bored and not having a show put on, and then still seeing those teams, under Mac Brown for like a decade. It didn't matter how good the spring game was or wasn't. They were going to win 10 games. And it was, are they going to beat Oklahoma? And are they going to go beyond that? I don't know. Like, I hear you. I feel you. I really do. And I don't have a great response to what is it that I need to see. Because there's a big part of me that looks at this first thing and realizes whatever we see good or bad in May or April, as the case may be, my months are completely off kilt because of the pandemic and the late start and everything else. I know that what matters and what happens in August and what this team looks like then is, I think, paramount to this conversation. So I'm open-minded, right? Like, I'm constantly, I think, described as one of the most critical people in the program in terms of media that covers the team.
Oh yeah, that's true.
It is true, right?
Oh yeah. I
mean, Tom Herman would probably agree with a lot of stuff that I'm saying.
Tom
today.
and Michelle.
He would agree with me that he would bristle at the word failure, and that he would want to protect the kids. But I think that there's just a part of me that's looking at this first season. It's a really tough schedule. They're the number 3 team in the Big 12 on paper coming in, and that's given them a big benefit of the doubt. I mean, Oklahoma and Iowa State are both going to be preseason top 10 teams. It's not a slap in the face to say that the team that finished 19th in the country is maybe not the 3rd best team in the. I mean, it's close.
By the way, do you buy that whole "this is one of the toughest schedules" thing?
I do.
Really?
I do.
I read your column, right? So,
because I think there's 7 games that Texas can lose. Okay, legitimately.
But technically, from an out-of-conference standpoint, there's one semi-tough game against a team that was not so good last year in Arkansas. Now, we can see what it looks like there. The other two...
It doesn't matter that they're not good. That game's in
everyone else is put. I mean, at that point, then everyone is playing, outside of Oklahoma has a tough schedule.
Yeah, but there's a thing. Texas on the road at Arkansas is just, there's no game in the Big 12 like that. There's none. I know they haven't. I know you got a taste of this in the bowl game that they played back in Charlie's first season. And
Arkansas. Yeah.
Yes. But it wasn't, that doesn't count. Going on the road Arkansas could go 2-10 next year, but against Texas at home, they'll be good. That will be a super competitive game. Any Texas fan that thinks that won't be a difficult game is too young and doesn't remember what those games were. I went to the last game that was in Fayetteville back in 2004, and a Texas team that went on to win the Rose Bowl and finish in the top 5 came within a Larry Dibble's forced fumble from losing that game potentially. And I just have a high amount of respect for the difficulty of going on the road at Arkansas, especially when we talk about a Texas team. You're the one that recently, as recent as last year, did the story on what Texas's non-conference record.
It's pretty bad.
It's awful.
Yeah.
It's awful. And Nick Saban didn't reinvent the wheel his first year at Alabama. If I'm not mistaken, in his first year, they lost to a directional Louisiana school.
Arkansas
like
was 3-7 last year. I had to pull it up because
they were not good. They were not.
They were. I mean, granted, they had to play a conference schedule, right? So maybe you give them, a couple of out of conference games, and so 2 more conference games. Maybe I still would put them at 5-7. I mean, still,
this will be the biggest game on the Arkansas schedule at home. Their fans will be super up for it. And Texas has a weird little rocky start because they play Louisiana, which is significantly better than Arkansas on paper. And I wonder to myself, will Texas pay them this ultimate amount of respect? And then I wonder, would they look ahead to Arkansas? We're a few months away from having to talk about this, but that's not an easy 1-2 punch to open the season. And one way or the other, if they beat Louisiana, it'll have to be a very mature team that gets right back on the saddle and goes on the road in Fayetteville to win that game. If Texas starts 2-0, I won't look at that as saying, well, they just beat 2 teams they should have beaten. I will look at that as they navigated a very tricky first 2 games. That's an incredibly good sign for Steve Sarkisian moving forward. I saw Mac Brown lose to NC State at home in 1999. Had a really good date at that game, by the way.
Oh, yeah?
She still looks great. She does not age. I once tried to set her up with Drew Brees. And then that was when she was in high school and Drew Brees was still in high school. And then she went to college. And I was like, maybe I should.
What about myself?
Because it was completely out of bounds when I'm in college and she's in high school.
Yeah, but she got older.
It was like that milk commercial. She grew up. And she still looks like she could still be married to Drew Brees, and you'd be like, oh, Drew got married to one of those NFL players, super gorgeous.
So you'll have to tell us how you messed it up at some point.
Oh, I just didn't have any game back in 1999. But I remember that game, A, for the date, and B, for the fact that on paper, that was a very Louisiana type opener.
Okay.
And they didn't have Ricky. They were doing all these things. First game, they had 3 punts blocked. It was a shambles. And those things can happen. So if they get through the first 2 games, I will be very bullish at that point. Or, I'll be in on this team having a really successful season.
Based off the first 2 games?
Off of a very tricky first 2 games.
So fascinating.
And I'm not saying super difficult. Right? I'm not even saying they're as difficult as what the LSU game a year ago would have been. What I'm saying is they're simply tricky. And in the last 10 years, I don't think there's been a Texas team in the last 10 years that would win both of the first 2 games of the 2021 season.
I mean, it's not, I did something years ago. I can't remember I got to go back and look, but it doesn't happen much when Texas starts off 3-0. Like, it just does not happen quite often, where they don't stumble and fall, whether it's against an LSU, whether it's a Cal,
Maryland.
BYU, Maryland, like you name it. And in Maryland, as a good example, wasn't a great team. I
Bingo.
mean, in either year, they weren't
but
a great
they
team.
were tricky.
Sure.
And I think that these two games are just like Maryland. On paper,
okay, I'll take
they
that.
won't get a ton of respect nationally for winning those games. But you and I have seen Texas teams with Maryland on the schedule, and Maryland comes out of the gate in the first game of the season at a level that Texas isn't quite ready for and doesn't really get replicated. Now, the Maryland games, they had injuries, right? So we saw in losses to Maryland where they lost quarterbacks to injury after that game. So it somewhat changed the narrative of what they could have done. But you're right. At the end of the day, they would lose to Maryland. At the end of the season, they'd be like, God, Maryland went 5-7. And they dropped a 40 piece. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah, my overreaction is those games in September come so thick and fast, and they're so tricky. And, you start thinking about the schedule. Oklahoma and Iowa State are the two toughest games on the schedule. Neither one of them are at home. And then you start thinking about what's after that. They are Oklahoma State's at home, but then they're on the road in Waco, on the road in Fort Worth, on the road in Morgantown. They've got on the road in Fayetteville, and they've got this home game against Louisiana. Yeah, I think that's a tough schedule. I get that Texas has the fourth toughest schedule in the country according to ESPN's FPI, and I'm with that. I get that. I really do.
I mean, I'm looking. Yeah, I mean Louisiana at Arkansas, Rice. I mean, but I get it. Like, I mean, this at some point though, Ketch. I mean, that's the reason why you hired Steve Sarkisian, right?
Bingo.
That's the reason why you said, like, we need that stability. Like, we got to be able to beat those teams. And so that's the reason why he's here. And so, if I guess for me, see, it's interesting because you got to get past that and you got to get to conference. And I'll stay with where you're at and won't go too off topic because, I'm always, me.
Well, and I have an overreaction I want to get to this. Okay. So just FYI.
Okay. So me, I'm the king of Texas fans, crawl before before you start walking and running and doing all these things. Like, I don't want to hear about, I don't want to hear about national championships and the top four and any of that type of stuff until you can take care of Iowa State's consistently, your TCU's consistently, Oklahoma State's consistently. So I'm with you, Ketch, before you even get into the Big 12 schedule. I'm with you. I'll go all chips in on what needs to happen in those first three games. There's still for me to bring it back to the spring game. I still want to see some sort of spark of something. Like I still want to see Casey Thompson pick up where he left off.
Well, you want to see the quarterbacks play well, and not great. I don't think anybody needs great. They need to set this thing up. They need to execute it in a way where, like, Casey Thompson and Hudson Card both get some playing time against the walk-ons early on so that they can have that 75-yard play that ends up on Sports Center. Seriously. Yeah. I think it would be it would give us a much better look at where this team is to see ones versus ones from the jump on Saturday. I don't know that they need that. I don't. Like, because the defense, I think, is ahead of the offense. And I think that what you'd like, I think what is really needed isn't a show as much as it isn't not a show. So if we come out of this, and I don't mean to throw Malik Murphy under the bus. I'm going to, though. And Malik, if you watch this, I'm one of your biggest proponents. But Malik had a tough game over the weekend. Did you see the stat line?
I did not. I saw some people talking about it, but I did not.
I don't know, man. I hate to even, it was bad. It was one of those like 7 of 22 type games where even though those weren't the numbers, it's in the 7 of 22 kind of ballpark. no touchdowns. I think less than 100 yards passing. And I can still sell Malik as a 5-star prospect from a physical standpoint. I don't think Malik's a 5-star prospect. I think he has the physical tools of a 5-star prospect. But if you were to watch that game or look at the final numbers, you'd probably think to yourself, that doesn't excite me into thinking that that's what this guy has in him. And I think that that's what, in a perfect world, the thing that you want to have coming out of Saturday's spring game is that both Hudson Card and Casey Thompson look like players that could start at quarterback for Texas, instead of guys that for the next 4.5 months, Texas fans are going to have questions about nonstop.
So for you, then the answer, it'll take me too long to find it, and we'll move on at some point. So for you, it's quarterback play. Like for you, Saturday is about walking away feeling like they've got either 1 out of 2 or even 2 out of 2, which, a good problem to have. Like, when's the last time you felt like you had quarterback A and 1A and 1B at Texas? Like, you'd have to tell me, Ketch, when's the last time you felt like both guys could start? I mean, maybe technically, Sam and Shane, but you're probably thinking more like elite levels, what you're thinking more so than anything else.
Yeah, Texas wants more out of those quarterbacks than what they were getting in 2018 and 2019. So, yeah.
Give me your overreaction.
I'm buying more Hudson Card stock. He's going to be
really.
My overreaction is that Hudson Card, you know why I know that Hudson Card's going to be the starter? Because I think the coaches are fibbing now. Like, I think I talked to 2 people that were at the scrimmage on Saturday that were like, Hudson Card was the better guy on Saturday. Didn't think that either one of them were great, but some of it went back to this. I mean, you and I have we talk about it every week. People may be watching this YouTube channel for the first time and not completely privy to the conversations that we've been having. But one of the areas where Casey Thompson has to be more consistent, and this was under the old staff especially, was day in and day out. He doesn't have to be the guy that he was in the Alamo Bowl, but he can't have bad days. He needs to be a guy that his worst day is still pretty good. And I think that his worst days right now haven't been pretty good. I think they've been, maybe when you think about the turnovers, I think both guys have turned the ball over too much in the spring from what I'm talking about, from who I've talked to. But on Saturday, Hudson Card, according to the people that were there and saw the scrimmage, had the better day. And when Steve Sarkisian talked to the media after the practice, he couched it into the conversation as, they're kind of even. Both guys did some things. Both guys made some mistakes. He has gone out of his way to not publicly give an attaboy to a quarterback that looks like he's given more of that attaboy to one player or the other. We know that Casey Thompson's been running out first every day. We know that he's been getting more first-team reps. But for the first time, I'm starting to hear people say definitively one guy was better than the other. And because I wrote about it the week before, like, it's a little disturbing that nobody's talking about the quarterbacks coming out of that first scrimmage. Come fast forward a week later, and there was a little bit of Hudson buzz. And not from guys that have stock in Hudson Card. Just everybody knows. I had a text message in a group who was like, I can't get your Hudson Card irrational love, and I was like, oh my God, like, that's how I'm known right now. Like, the way that you were known with Tyrone Swoops.
Shout out to my main man, Tyrone Swoops.
Probably me too, though. Like, I threw you under the bus.
You know what's funny? I was more of a Chris Warren stand on the table guy than I was anybody else. And it's ironic because if someone really wanted to throw something legit in my face, they should really throw the Chris Warren thing. But they go back to it ain't even close. It's
I know. I feel like I've got a million things you can legitimately criticize me for. And it's weird when the ones that I'm like, I don't know that that's like Garrett Gilbert. Like I still get the Garrett Gilbert thing. And it's like, that guy's still earning a paycheck in the NFL. Like he started for America's team this year. Yeah. How wrong was I? I was really wrong with him, by the way. But like if that's my biggest mistake, I mean, a lot of people should have success as good as my biggest mistakes.
Well, my biggest mistake resulted in another quarterback, which by the way, wasn't a mistake. It was what they felt at the time. I still got to go back. They finished 5-7. Like, where is your gotcha moment in 5-7 in a loss to Kansas and 3 interceptions in that game? Like, I don't think you got me per se. Like, it's a great joke. I'd say, the old journalist credo is don't let facts get in the way of a good story. That's the old newsroom mantra. I'm like, wait, there's no gotcha at 5-7. You was with.
It could be worse, man. What? People could say we took a dump in a recruit's bathroom and stunk it up.
You know what? That would be way worse.
And we've had the parent, we've had Walker Little's dad go on the record and say, please get it out there that nobody came and took a bomb in our house. And no pun intended, but that still sticks. Yeah. That dude will never be unassociated with taking a poop in somebody's, like a bad one.
Yeah.
And, so all things being equal, it's Austin or it ain't even close. Like 85%. There are worse things. Yeah. There are worse things that we could have on our tombstones. Here lies Anwar and Ketch. They once took a gigantic poop in a I don't want that.
That'd be worse.
If someone wants to say 85% on my tombstone, I could.
True.
In living, I could live with that in passing. I couldn't live with the bathroom thing. So
you don't want to be that other reporter who's known for like accidentally tweeting out porn. You don't want to be that guy either.
Bingo.
Because that guy
it never goes away.
That guy can never lose it down, no matter what.
Never. Nothing else you ever accomplish matters more than the time you were watching amateur stuff. Like, what's the big deal? I'm not going crazy with my hyperbole on Hudson today. I'm just saying it's the stock to buy.
So if it was Amazon stock when it first came out, or
it's Bitcoin.
Bitcoin.
Hudson Card is Bitcoin, baby.
Wow. Bitcoin is that thing that we all say, I wish I had a friend that would have told me to drop 1,000 in there. And like everyone's trying to go to Dogecoin, and I don't think it's going to happen. But don't trust me, okay? You're saying he's Bitcoin.
Yep.
I mean, Bitcoin. When you say Bitcoin, Ketch, I think you're saying he's going to be sitting in New York another couple of years, waiting to see if he gets a trophy. That's Bitcoin to me.
I mean, I think Hudson Card, in my estimation, is a better. I had him rated as a 5-star in a world where I'm ranking high school quarterback prospects from the state of Texas in the last 3 or 4 years. I rank Hudson Card over Quinn Ewers, and it's not even close. I rank him over Cade Klubnik, and it's not even close. And you know I love me some Klubnik. That I've got Quinn Ewers ranked as a national top 25, top 30 prospect. If all those guys were coming in the same year, I would rank Hudson Card number 1. So, yeah, I mean, if I think a guy's a 5-star, look, 5-star talents hit on the NFL level in most general basic levels at like 60% clips. Typically, the 40% are like injuries, a litany of things that can make a guy not pan out. But even more so, quarterbacks from the state of Texas with that kind of a rating get drafted at 80% clips over the course of the last 20 years. I think Hudson Card is one of those guys. So what that means is, I think he's going to be a baller in college. I think he's going to be one of the best college quarterbacks in the country. I don't know if it happens this year, but it's starting to happen a little bit. And I'm starting to hear that it's noticeable that there are days when he's definitely better than Casey Thompson. And to not hear Sarkeesian on Saturday say, Hudson had a good day. Hudson was good today. In a way that was honest with us, tells me, okay, now I know how to look at Sarkeesian's remarks as it relates to the quarterbacks. This was the first data point for me where it was like, I wonder what he says, because the people that I talked to were definitive in their praise of Hudson versus Casey. And look, and I wrote about this in my 10 Thoughts column. It wasn't an anti-Casey thing. And one of my sources was a guy that's played college football and was like, man, if I say one guy played well, it will come across like the other didn't. Mm-hmm. He's like, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that I thought Hudson looked better today. And he goes, that does not mean I think Casey Thompson won't be the starting quarterback or that Casey Thompson isn't a better player, because this guy that I talked to is a big-time Casey Thompson guy. He thinks the Alamo Bowl is everything. So for him to tell me, hey, I know what we've argued about before with the quarterbacks, because I've tried to explain to him the old staff wasn't high on Casey at all compared to how they were high on Hudson. And he was like, but the Alamo Bowl, and look how good he was. And I was like, I get it. I get it. What I'm telling you is this. And he saw practice on Saturday and came away from that saying, okay, I know now what you were referencing when you said, on the practice field, Hudson can come across as superior. It was just an acknowledgement that, because I think that there's still a conversation to be had about Casey Thompson's a gamer and what he brings to what he brought to the Alamo Bowl field can't be measured on Thursdays and Fridays. It gets measured on Saturdays. And Hudson doesn't have that going for him. Hudson doesn't have a single performance that you can point to and say, but he did that. And it makes this conversation really complicated. I mean, it's the first big decision that Steve Sarkisian has to make as head coach at Texas. And I think by the time we get to August, Hudson Card will be outperforming Casey Thompson on a daily basis.
I mean, that's interesting. First of all, you're going to have Alex Dunlap lose everything, because Alex Dunlap, one of our coworkers, and for those of you new to the channel, the first practice he ever saw Casey Thompson in, he anointed him as the next best, greatest thing ever. And so I even talked to Alex. He was on my podcast this past week, and I was like, "Do you remember the bed?" And in any case, it was supposed to be good or special, something to that effect. And
I think all Big 12.
Yeah, he said it wasn't that specific, but he has it somewhere. So in any case, no matter what, I guess we all jumped in because we all wanted a part of that action, because it was going to be Franklin. So in any case, that's what it is. It's if Hudson Card is able to do that and leapfrog him in that capacity, then to your point, then he has to be all world, because we're not privy to practice, but we know what we see. Okay. And what we saw, whether it's a couple of games last year, or what we saw in the Alamo Bowl, we saw enough to know, okay, well, that guy looks like he's pretty good. So if you go out and say, okay, yeah, but the other guy is better than this guy, and then he's got to be legit. I mean, he's got to be something special. He's got to be something amazing in order for that to happen. Because I think Casey Thompson is a good quarterback. I don't think what happened in the bowl game was an anomaly. I think we got to see an immediate contrast in that bowl game. We saw what this offense looked like in one half under Sam Ehlinger, and we saw what this thing looked like in the second half. Same players with Casey Thompson. It just looked like it looked like it was headed towards a dogfight after the first half. and then Sam gets the shoulder, and the next thing you know, it was an explosion that we hadn't seen. So if you say, yeah, I know what you saw, but this guy here, he's better than that. All right.
The problem is, Anwar, that guy that showed up in San Antonio has not showed up one day in Austin yet for the first 3 weeks of practice.
I mean,
so how long? And now look, we know, you and I know that the weight of what happens in a bowl game situation like that is significant. But because I always point back that John Mackovic thought that James Brown was the worst practice player that he ever saw. And then James Brown turned out to be the quarterback of John Mackovic's entire life, that he won the Big 12 championship and the last Southwest Conference championship for John Mackovic. And Mackovic didn't think he was getting that. He did not think that's who he had. What do you tell Steve Sarkisian and AJ Millie and the rest of that offensive staff? Like, how many times do they say, well, the Alamo Bowl, when the player of that quality from that game hasn't appeared in a Texas practice yet, to the extent where, you know, we're legitimately hearing people say it's not even close? Because if Casey Thompson was doing what he did in the Alamo Bowl every day in practice, it'd be discussed in that fashion, like, holy cow, it's on. This guy's going to be one of the best players. I'm not hearing, you know what, I'll tell you what's alarming. Neither quarterback is being mentioned as one of the best 5 players on the team right now. If I say who's really standing out,
that's fair.
You're getting Jordan Whittington, you're getting Bijan, you're getting, Rashawn, you're getting
Benda.
Exactly. You're getting the defensive line, Keandre Coburn, right? You're getting some names.
Kobe Jones.
And I'm not hearing, and look, even the guys saying buy your Hudson Card stock, they didn't say, oh, that was one of the best players on the team. And I think that, again, where Casey has to be able to reach the level of not having these valleys. He's got a hell of a peak. His valleys show up in these 15 practices a little too often, and in front of a coaching staff that wasn't there the night that he had his peak. He's going to have to win this job with his performances in the spring. It's not enough, I think, to be even with Hudson Card right now, even if he's taking the first snaps with the first team. And even if on a play-by-play basis, he's getting more reps with the first team, when those practices end and he's being given those advantages and the practice isn't ending with, he was definitely better than Hudson today. I think we're again, I'm not backing off of anything I've said about Hudson Card, because I've been strong in my statements coming out of the weekend. Yeah, I'm holding. I'll buy more. If I can find it cheap, I'll keep buying my. Now, look, if I could find some cheap Casey Thompson stock, I'd buy that too. I'd scoop up both their stocks, because at the end of the day, what we're being sold is that under Steve Sarkisian, both of those guys can be potentially elite. But day in and day out in practice thus far, that hasn't materialized with every player. But over the weekend, Hudson Card did enough where, at least for a day, there's a little bit of separation there from those that are watching practice.
Oh, fascinating. Well, here's the thing. And, I think most people know it, but somebody may not know. I mean, the moment, if this happens, the moment that Hudson Card is named the starter, Casey Thompson packs his bags. He's done. He's gone. He's a grad transfer. He graduates in, I think he's already graduated, or he graduates to spring break. Either way, I know for sure he's a grad transfer that has 3 more years of eligibility left. And everything has been done. So when they got to this point, the family got to this point, if he's the starter at Texas, he stays. And if not, he leaves. And by the way, I don't believe that if you get into August and you name him the starter, that all of a sudden he's just going to hang around.
Yeah,
he's going to leave. Even in August, he will leave and go somewhere else. Like that. That's the deal. Like
Yeah.
that's the deal. You could wait and say, all right, they'll know, and they'll know come, by the time you hit the second week of August or so, when you start to need to really starting to prep for, Louisiana, they'll know for sure that if he's got it or not. And when they have that conversation and like, hey, Hudson's the guy, like, okay, cool. Good luck to you. It's been fun. You don't think, like, come on, we know this game. You don't think they have options or they have people that they're talking to or have something on the back burner. It's not going to be go to the transfer portal, wait and see what happens. And it'll go into transfer portal and probably within a couple of days have a home, and be ready to go. So that leaves Texas with Hudson Card and Charles Wright as their two quarterbacks this year.
And suddenly with one of those three spots in the transfer market, instead of addressing O-line or pass, you know what I mean? Instead of boosting areas, they only have three spots left. And, I think they'd like to, they need offensive linemen. They need to inject a few starting level players. But if you lose a quarterback, you got to get someone to come in and be a backup. You have to. So so I get why Sarkeesian is not just painting the picture with his public words the way that he is, but their actions would scream in a meeting with Casey and his dad, like, hey, you literally take the first team snaps at every practice. Like, what are you talking? You know what I mean? And, but if it gets to a point where at the end of the spring where they look at each other and go, then I think you know what I mean? We'll see. I think one of the biggest things Sarkeesian will have to work around is what if it shows up in the spring game? What if this Saturday looks like last Saturday? You won't be able to contain the public optimism at that point. So who knows? Maybe what Sarkeesian really needs is for both guys to be evenly okay.
What if Casey Thompson looks like the Casey Thompson we saw in an Alamo Bowl? And now all of a sudden you want to say, okay, this was just one of 15 practices.
It's a great question.
But in public opinion, they're going to say, wait a second. We saw him ball out here. We've seen him ball out here. You're going somewhere else? Now all of a sudden the scrutiny is on, right? Because now everyone's going to say, wait a second. Casey goes somewhere else. And now everyone looks at Hudson Card and every single pass will be analyzed, overanalyzed. It'll be a lot of pressure put on him because if he goes out and balls and looks anything like he looked in the Alamo Bowl, that puts if he wants to go with Hudson Card, that puts a lot of pressure on him.
It really does, which makes Saturday bigger for Casey Thompson than it does for Hudson Card. Because I think you're right. It will be very hard to take the hero of the Alamo Bowl. And if he significantly outperforms Hudson Card in the spring game, it'll be hard for some people to reconcile. Well, we're picking the other guy when those other two data points exist.
Yeah.
I will say that in the spring game in 2006, when Jevin Sneed and Colt McCoy were battling for the starting job, which is one of the closest things I think we really have to what this is.
Okay.
I mean, think about it along the lines of Casey Thompson's the Colt McCoy figure and Hudson Card's a little bit of the Jevin Sneed figure in this debate. Coming out of the spring game, it was the opposite of what happened. Jevin Sneed had the better spring game and had just showed up 3 months earlier. So the thought was they are even. And if they're even, the more highly recruited younger players leaving. We say that about every position. It's weirdly different this year at the quarterback position because of the advantages that Casey has. I don't know. I don't think it would, for Casey's own positioning in this conversation, he'll need the Saturday performance. I really believe that. Because I think would be able to walk out of a 2 or 3 touchdown performance and say, yep, I'm that dude. I wonder what privately, because we haven't had a chance to talk to either quarterback.
And I doubt that we will.
I mean, one of the offensive linemen talking about the quarterbacks was enough for the sports information department at Texas to start chopping up video like they're watching the JFK film. Like,
we'll never talk to Denzel Okafor again.
Oh, Denzel's been bored.
Oh, he's done.
Like, good. I'm glad we got to meet you, know you over the course of 6 years, Denzel, but you don't get to ever talk to us again.
No.
And I love the fact that they thought that they could edit that interview and just take that out.
They totally took it out. And like, it doesn't exist. Even though it's everywhere on social media, it doesn't exist. Never happened. Never happened.
Hey, they live in a world where that's kind of the mantra, right? Like, if I don't acknowledge something's existence, it doesn't exist, no matter how much it exists. You could tell me I got these championship belts right over my right hand shoulder, and I could be like, I don't see them.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about. All I see is a white wall. Like, it sounds ludicrous.
Yeah.
But like that passes for conversation and like public positioning on all kinds of manners. So I am still of the opinion at the end of the day that they're going to look at Hudson Card over 15 workouts in April and 15 workouts in August. So 30 workouts total. They'll decide he's our best guy over 30 practices, and we have to lean on that. But I'm not saying that appearance will exist next Monday when we do this show.
Fair enough. Okay. All right. You got anything else you want to overreact to?
No. Not really. I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good. We'll keep it UT centric today.
Yeah.
In future podcasts, we won't scare YouTube. I mean, yeah, this weekend was all moving related. I don't have any move related thoughts that feel like overreactions. Like if I say moving sucks.
Yeah.
That's not an overreaction. That's just the reaction. And I'm too tired to be like, it's the hardest move of all. I don't have it in me. So my only reaction to like all the stuff that happened to me personally over the weekend was just a normal, I need a nap. That's my reaction.
Yeah, from a non-sports thing, I don't have much of one. I've been doing the daddy thing. So,
I have an overreaction.
What?
Anwar Richardson is as good with his tool set as Tim the Toolman Taylor.
You better clean that up real quick, though.
What did I do?
You said I'm good with my tools. Like that. That has double meanings. So you might want to.
Yeah, but I went straight to Tim the Tool Man.
Yeah, but let's just.
The thing is, I don't even know what tool you use to take. Look, here's the deal. I needed help. I was about to say I was going to mention my bed,
in fact, it's going to get worse because now you're going to say, "Well, I needed help with my bed." And
in the bedroom.
Came over.
Anwar came over with his kids, and like we all went to the bedroom together. And Anwar took apart my bed. And all I'm saying is, in my moment of crisis, when I didn't have any tools and I didn't know what to do, Anwar was the resident tool man at orangebloods.com. And he's never been better in my estimation ever. That's my overreaction.
So overreaction for like the multiple threads on Orange Bloods that this is going to be. Just always remember that these videos will be cut and spliced and taken off.
Texas, we're going to send it to John Bianco. He's going to take care of him.
John, we got an editing job for you. If you want anything on the side, just take out anything bad.
Just listen to watch the whole thing.
Yes.
And then when you get to the part that doesn't need to be in existence, just delete that part. Go into the 5-minute video of us just going, Sark is great.
So for those at home, so Ketch is in the middle of his move and he was having difficulty disassembling the bed. He asked me, like, could I do? I was like, yeah, I could totally do that. So when my kid woke up from a nap, took him over, came over, it was like, this is an easy fix, was able to disassemble it. So that is what he's saying. And I want to make sure that it's very clear what you're trying to communicate. Here's my overreaction. My son did well in basketball this week. So shout out to the people at the Round Rock Sports Complex. So
what do we do when he's a prospect?
I don't know.
I mean, we've got like almost a decade, not quite.
Yeah, we got a while. But he's 8, so a little bit less than that.
When he's like 14, 15, it's going to begin. And like, by then the imaging and license deal will be in effect. Dude, talk about bank.
Yeah, potentially.
Imagine what you'll be able to do.
I don't want to leave my kid
he's so far away from it.
Yeah.
We can talk about him in completely hypothetical terms. I can make you Lonzo Ball, and like in 7-8 years, people will forgot that we had this conversation.
Well, yes, because it won't be on YouTube. Unless you say there's going to be something else that replaces YouTube that we need to buy stock in. But no, it's
thanks for now. Like us and subscribe to us. But yes,
Perfect.
in 7 years from now,
yes,
the next thing will happen.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's that. So we had some really good, and like, oh yeah, by the way, Ketch, let them know, like, at some point we may have someone who hosts this thing for us, and then so that will eventually grow into that. So yeah, we're looking forward to some nice, fun things that we're going to do on this channel. It's been we've been talking about doing it for years, and we finally just been like, you know what, we've been putting this on the back burner for so long, kids and life and moving and all my divorces. And so we just decided, let's go ahead and get this thing knocked out. So we're late to the party, but listen, ain't no party like an OB party, because the OB party don't stop.
Like us, subscribe to the channel. There will be more conversations like this one where we talk about overreactions and Texas quarterbacks, and presumably never Anwar coming over to my bedroom to fix a bed.
I'm gonna hit the end button soon. Hitting the end button now.
Like and subscribe. All right, I gotta go, my man.
See ya.